Hydrilla, really tall, thick hydrilla. Most people avoid fishing those style fisheries, right? They think it's too congested, there's too much on the water. But we're gonna kind of talk about some techniques I use, because hydrilla and thick grass mats are my favorite thing to target, especially this time of year moving into fall. And there's a lot of big fish that hold inside that grass. So we'll break it down, talk about some techniques. Specifically, my favorite to run over the grass, a belly weighted swim bait hook and a paddle tail. All right, so one of the most effective techniques I've found for fishing very, very heavy grass, right? Very heavy top surface hydrilla, okay, is a weighted swim bait hook and a paddle tail. And I just drag it right on that surface, okay? And what's nice is you can drop it in the holes, you can burn it, but our paddle tail, the POG, we drew the boot to be oversized. So it's gonna create a nice bubble trail. Looks like bait that's trapped on top of the grass, and it's extremely effective. Now, obviously, you want it as weedless as possible so you can fish it like a top water, but like I said, it's nice because you can drop it into your pad channels, right? And you can still, you know, have that bottom bait. So let's go ahead and get out. One of my favorite colors of paddle tail to use is Pro Blue or our gizzard shad, right? I love a natural gizzard shad color. I'll pull some Pro Blue out just because, and maybe a shad. And we're gonna keep these on the deck right here, but we're gonna start out with gizzard shad. You have a screw lock, and you're gonna just screw it into that nose, right? Try to center it as much as you can. And screw that nose in, and then you're gonna line your bait up, right? So that's where we need to go in, right here. And that's your bait. Now, since we're fishing on grass, we're gonna tuck that tip in just like that, and this is our profile. And again, you're gonna fish this on top of the grass, you're gonna burn it. I love fishing it on these edges, but just even swimming it right below the surface of the water does really, really well. Especially in, like I said, hydrilla. So, and there's some really good belly roll on this paddle tail. And I use a weighted swim bait hook because I like to keep it just at that surface, right? And it still has enough weight to get it out there to cast it, but it's coming through this grass right on the top here. So if there are fish under, they'll see it and it looks like bait skimming the top. Grass, weighted swim bait hook, paddle tail, extremely effective. It's weedless. So when we're breaking down grass, right? You can see the little tufts of grass right on the top of the water here. And it doesn't mean there's not grass to the left and right of it, right? It just means that that grass is taller. So what I like to do is, you know, pop up every once in a while and see if I can visibly see any holes, right? Because what I'm gonna do, you can see how I'm burning this paddle tail, right? It comes right through it. If we get to this hole right here, like right in front of us, I drop it. I drop it right in that hole, right? Give it a little pop. If there's any bass in this grass right here, hiding, see it kicks on the drop, they'll come out and they'll eat. If I can see the holes. If not, what you're gonna do is just cast along the grass here, try to navigate the channels, right? Because a lot of these bigger fish will hang in the channels or ambush points. And what we're just waiting for is fish to bust out of the bottom of the grass, or sometimes they sunbathe on top of it. We find a lot of times, especially other species of fish like snakehead, they'll sit on top of this grass here to get the warmth. They're not so deep. But that's why the paddle tail is extremely, extremely effective at simulating that 2 to 3 inch size bait, right, that these fish are feeding on. but it's still super weedless, and you can keep it on top of this grass when you're reeling it in to try to hopefully trigger a bite. Now for grass in thicker conditions, I really strongly recommend for your gear, you upsize your gear, right? If you're normally throwing a medium heavy, move up to a heavy. I like 15 to 20 pounds worth of drag. And the reason is you're not just hook setting a fish, right? When you hook set, you have grass on your line, and you have to obviously pull the grass, right? And you want to keep those barbs pinned, especially in pads, which is a whole different video. Up your drag, you can play them on the drag, but the initial hook set, you want the barbs to pass. If you're landing frogfish or vegetation fish and the frog or the lure pops right out of its mouth, it's because you're not having enough backbone in your rod to be able to pin that fish and penetrate the barb. So upsize your gear. When I'm fishing grass and stuff like this, it is a minimum to have a medium heavy or a mag medium heavy and 15 to 20 pounds drag. My favorite reel right now for those conditions, the Lose Tournament Pro is a phenomenal reel, and then the Lose Custom, which is new, it's right at the $180 price point. It is a little more expensive. You can find some lower drag reels for that, but this is the reel that I prefer to throw, is the Lose Custom, and this is the Icon Frog Rod from Cashin. You can go to a worm and jig, but generally for these conditions, that's what I'm sticking to at a minimum. So the second technique is obviously a frog, right? A hollow body frog is what most people throw in these conditions. It's dependent on the fishery, right? Up on the Potomac River, a frog is extremely effective, and you're gonna fish it the same way, right? You wanna make commotion and indent with a heavier frog on the grass. And the reason I like to use a heavier frog is because when they are under that grass mat, if you have a light frog, the grass isn't gonna sink as much, right? And what these fish are doing to track the lure on top is they're watching the indentation on the grass. So it's easier for them to follow if you throw a heavier frog, right? Make some pops, make some noise to draw them out. Sometimes they don't want that though, right? They want those subtle reaction bites through the grass. But a frog, same thing, look for the open pockets, right? Be very patient on the hook set in grass. They're more likely to miss because a lot of the times they're going off sound and they can't visibly see the bait that they're trying to eat. So pay attention, use bright colors. I like using whites, pinks, reds. These are the conditions that I'm throwing these bright colors because you're generally bomb casting onto a mat to stay stealthy, right? And you want to be able to see if the fish actually ate your lure. So technique number 2, clear as day, it's a frog. It's easy. This fishery specifically, they do not like a frog as much as a buzzbait. Unfortunately right now, I do recommend throwing buzzbaits in your grass, but you have to be very careful on the gap between the surface of the water and your grass. Normally, if this fishery is about 6 inches or 8 inches higher than what it is now, I'm throwing a buzzbait. I can hit these pockets, but unfortunately right now it's just not, it's not the right condition for a buzzbait. Technique number 3, and probably my favorite since I have moved to South Carolina, is a big speed worm. And you guys have seen a lot of my videos. I'm throwing a 7-inch speed worm with a lot of action. And yet again, we're looking for pockets. But what's nice about a speed worm with a fat tail is it's gonna slap the top of the water if you burn it. A little bit bigger of a presentation. And the difference is, if I find pockets and channels, I can fish it like a Texas rig. That tail will stand up on bottom. This fish can pick it up. And it's been an extremely effective technique around grass edges, around pads, especially this time of year, because in the summer, fish are lethargic. They will look for that big bite, that big meal, right? And it's a big presentation worm for them to chow down on. Now for speed worms, my favorite thing to do for them, I like to double peg 1/8 to 3/16, sometimes a 1/4 ounce weight on the nose. I use a 5/0 hook, right? I want that hook to be positioned a little more in the rear, so if they're eating it, there's less likely to be a short strike. And we are using a medium heavy, right? with a reel that is rated for 15-pound drag. Now, I do not use fluorocarbon when I'm fishing grass. I prefer braid. There's a lot of pickerel and bowfin in here too, and I'm less likely to break off if I'm throwing straight braid. So if your water's gin clear and you're dropping in holes, be mindful maybe using, you know, a 17-pound or so fluorocarbon leader might be effective for you, but for me, I go straight braid. I have no issues. I work my bait extremely fast. See, there's a hole, drop it in the hole, pop, pop, bring it up. All right, so buzz baits. There are two styles that I like to fish. You see the blade difference. C blade, E blade. E blades, you can run extremely shallow. Okay, this is the Wee Whacker. You guys have seen any of my videos in the past, you know I love this buzz bait. And the reason I like it is because I can throw it in these channels right here and it just skims the top, right? It's very subtle, not as loud as a clacker, but I can fish it right on top of this grass here. And I like to hit these pad edges, right? Try to call these fish out. Now with any buzz bait, if you want a little more noise, you can compress the wires together, right? To make it a little louder. But this one's just subtle. It's just enough. I like to throw my buzz baits. If it's a heavier buzz bait, I'll go with a 7-foot heavy, depending on the fishery, or 7'3" medium heavy, and that's what I got on this one right here. Is a 7'3" medium heavy. It's a little too much grass, and this is where that smaller buzz bait comes. Ignore what I just said. Nice buzzbait fish right there. So this buzzbait right here, you can see it's an inline style buzzbait, and we're running a toad on it. And this clacker is set in place by that sleeve right there. And it is a C blade, so we can fish this a little shallower, right? Not as shallow as the small one that we're using, but you see we're skimming the top of this water and trying to hit these channels. We could punch. That's the next technique, is punching and flipping this grass. I didn't bring anything to punch because I don't have the whole day to dedicate to segmenting off. But with punching, you know, I prefer a slimmer profile creature bait, right? That is less likely to rip on the drop. I use a 1 ounce to 1.5 ounce tungsten weight, right? Flipping weight. It's more of a teardrop shape, not that long cylinder. And I'm using a 7'6" heavy, moderate fast to punch with 60 to 65 pound braid. And you're gonna work segments, right? Because you're essentially just flipping it into a grass mat, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, bring it in, flip it back in. And it takes a while, but punching obviously is extremely effective if you have the right gear. It just takes a lot of time and dedication if you want to punch 600 yards worth of a grass mat. I don't got that kind of time today. So as for kayaking in grass, right, this is a whole different part of this. You know, certain kayaks perform better than others, paddling, tracking. This is the Coosa FD. It is a pointed nose. It tracks through grass phenomenally. You know, if you have a heavier kayak, just be aware it's gonna have a lot more wear on your paddle as you're navigating that grass. This little hook grabber here, just a little pro tip, flip your paddle upside down because that will get caught in the grass. Sorry, the sun is blocking a lot of this video, but flip your paddle upside down, keeps that hook slot up. You're less likely to snag up on grass when you're paddling, because that's a lot of the problems. People get stuck, you can fatigue out, especially when it's hot, right? You can fatigue out real easy in hydrilla, and you don't want that. Overall though, my preferred technique is based on the fishery, right? If we're fishing certain spots, I'll go to the worm. I'll cycle between the worm and a weightless paddle tail or a swim bait paddle tail. It really just depends on the forage, right? Our reservoirs here traditionally have done better with a big speed worm, as opposed to the smaller bodies of water. They're feeding on smaller bait, and I tend to gravitate to, you know, the paddle tails and things like that. Now, like I said, with a buzz bait, you can fish it in hydrilla. You just got to pay attention to your blade size. I prefer an E blade. It's the smallest blade you can get on a buzz bait, and really, honestly, you need 4 to 6 inches of water. And what's nice is, like we're seeing now, when fish move in grass, you can see it a lot easier. So we got some V-taper action going on here that we're gonna work our way over and try to find. Gotta figure out where the fish are at, where they're living.